Since Mark is actually the earliest, one could still claim that it started with Mark and developed after that. But we don't see each author making the story more complex. We see them listing different things entirely at certain times, and at other times simplifying what Mark wrote. So this is why the development theory suffers from a fallacy of neglect of negative instances. This is where one picks data to confirm their theory while ignoring other pieces of data that would work against their theory. So we are told the development theory is true because the number of miracles and angels at the tomb increases from Mark to the other accounts. But if the development theory is true, we should expect to see development happening in all places, not just the parts we cherry pick. We will leave Paul out, since as we said, he did not write a gospel. But comparing Mark to the other gospels, we can see the development theory only works when we select certain aspects and cherry pick. Let's remember the resurrection narratives actually come with crucifixion narratives. So we should expect the number of miracles to increase also in the crucifixion narratives. But this doesn't happen. John records no miracles during the crucifixion. Mark and Luke record the darkness and the temple curtain ripping, and Matthew lists 4 miraculous events. So when it comes to the crucifixion, this changes the order from John to Mark and Luke, and then Matthew being the most developed. But it doesn't stop there, because remember, these narratives are part of entire Gospels, which list miracles during Jesus' life and ministry. But John only lists 7, Mark records about 20, and Matthew records about 22, and Luke at 21. How about the number of women at the tomb? Well, John only names 1, Matthew names 2, Mark lists 3, and Luke lists 3 plus others. So this would put the order from John to Matthew, Mark, and then Luke being the most developed. So we don't see the development theory working here either. If the story was evolving, we should see each one building off the other and adding more and more complexity, while retaining the stories from the previous Gospels. But we don't see that. We actually see material independent to each Gospel, and complexity in different areas. For example, Mark gives us more details for some of the stories of Jesus that Matthew and Luke only brush over. If there was evolution happening, we should see Matthew and Luke adding to the stories of Mark, not reducing the content. So really, Mark seems to develop certain stories about Jesus, not the other way around. And then, we should see John as the most complex, but we see he lists the least amount of miracles and supernatural events at the crucifixion and during his gospel. Plus, he barely mentions material from the synoptics. How could he be developing the story if he doesn't mention much of what the other 3 wrote? So I propose another theory, the aspect theory. Each gospel is reporting the account of the ministry and death of Jesus from their own individual aspects. Because they all have their own personalities, purposes, writing styles, and different audiences, they will record things differently. Someone will add complexity to a certain aspect for specific reasons, and others will focus on other aspects for other reasons. Certain things will stick out in their minds, and they will list different witnesses based on who they talk to. And sometimes they will leave out certain events, another one reported, because they want to save space for something else. So if the development theory is true, we should see each author making it more and more complex as they came along. And this should be done in almost every aspect. What we should not see is 4 authors who seem to be building on one another in one way, but then vice versa on another subject. But that is in fact what we see, which means it is more likely they are reporting about the same events, just from different aspects. And the development theory is just an attempt to cherry pick the data to form a hypothesis, which is easily debunked once we look at the facts. The aspect theory works far better and fits with all the data, since it can account for how the Gospels were actually written.